Welcome to a series of presentations on MCP 13.0 Workload Management. Host system limits provide the Workload Management Administrator the ability to define total system resource usage limits for both CPU and I/O. These defined limits are checked against a user-defined threshold time limit, and if either or both are exceeded, corresponding host events are thrown. This feature is independent of any workload group or statistical data collection options, as the limit comparisons are made against data supplied directly from the MCP on total system CPU and I/O resource usage. The limits can optionally be defined at the host level and inherited by any selected policies, or defined directly at the policy level. For example, the CPU rate limit could be defined differently in, say, an month-end policy when processing consumption is known to be higher. The following is a short demonstration of the host system limits feature of workload management. What we have here is two copies of Workload Center connected to the same host system, LE680p2, showing different views. This is just for demonstration purposes and not required for the feature. You see by the statistics CPU display that the system is consuming CPU at just under 30%. By right-clicking on the host name and selecting Host System Limits, the Host System Limits dialog is displayed. From here, you can specify the CPU rate limit, I/O rate limit, and a threshold time value for the system. Please note that on metered systems, CPU rate limit can be defined in either percentage of system CPU, RPM, or MIPS. On non-metered systems, only the percentage of system CPU option is available. Note that the specific CPU rate value is 30% and the threshold time is 5 seconds. These probably are not realistic values but work for demonstration purposes. A rate limit value of 0, I/O rate limit in this example, indicates that no limit checks will be performed against this item. Next, we edit the active policy by right-clicking on the policy name and selecting Edit Policy. The Edit Policy dialog is displayed and the System Limits tab is selected. This dialog looks and performs the same as the Host System Limits dialog, but just for this specific policy. Checking the Use Host System Limits box causes the Host System Limits defined values to populate this dialog. In this mode, any change made to the host system limits will automatically be applied to this and any other associated policy. Clicking the OK button applies the new values and closes the dialog. I now start a CPU-intensive program to increase the system's CPU consumption. You can see by the statistics CPU display the CPU usage increasing. Once the CPU rate limit and threshold time have been exceeded, a host event is thrown. The host event indicates that the current CPU limit has been exceeded. I now raise the CPU rate limit via the Host System Limits dialog to 80%. Since we are no longer exceeding the limit, the host event automatically clears once the threshold time is exceeded. To demonstrate the policy-specific limits, I will now modify the host system limits in the active policy. Right-clicking the policy name and selecting Edit Policy, the Edit Policy dialog displays. Selecting the System Limits tab and unchecking the Use Host System Limits box enables the limits fields. I can now set whatever limit values for this specific policy. Changing the CPU limit values to 45 and clicking the OK button causes the limits check to be below the current CPU consumption rate, and once the threshold time is exceeded, a host event is thrown. For a more complete description of this feature, please refer to the Workload Center help text. This completes this demonstration of the Host System Limits feature of workload management.